Hi, everybody. Got Jeremy Scrivens with me today.
Yes.
And Jeremy is dialing in from Melbourne in Australia. Jeremy, where can people get hold of you?
On LinkedIn. There's only one Jeremy Scrivens on LinkedIn, I think.
Right.
On Twitter at Jeremy Scrivens.
Right.
LinkedIn and Twitter are two, and also on Facebook. But I think LinkedIn and Twitter are two great ways to start.
Okay. And you're happy to take questions and that as we go through this, if there's any audience participation.
Yeah, sure. And also during or after, and I'm open to these kind of things.
You're a big social person anyway, aren't you? So.
Yeah, and I just believe in sharing and having conversations. I think I'm not really interested in celebrity stuff. I'm actually more interested in the idea that conversations are the way to go, and conversations mean an equal platform, and we're all equal but different.
So, very quickly, to give some detail about your background. Well, very quickly, yeah.
I was born in England, born in Oxford. Father was a Church of England minister. Spent time in Rhodesia, Jamaica, back to England 3 times, then Australia in 1970. So I went to school there, and pretty much been based in Australia ever since. It's a long time now.
And your background is human resources, isn't it?
Yeah, I started with what's called the Federal Public Service here. We call it personnel management in those days, then HR. But I was fortunate enough to right through my career with Commonwealth Public Service, SEC, and then Telstra, the telco here in the 90s, to be involved in the front end of HR. What I mean by that is questions like how do we grow, how do we start up new businesses, and so on. So I was involved in the 90s in starting up the part of the team that started up the new HR framework for the new mobiles business in Telstra, and then the internet. So we were hiring young kids with wearing jeans, not the suits that they were supposed to wear when they entered through the corridors of Telstra. So a lot of innovation, and it was then I began to get fascinated with what work is. So HR. But then 2000, I left Telstra. I thought there must be life after a big telco or a big company, and I started my own business. And I converted to a strengths-based approach of seeing things, and called my business the emotional economy at work. Why? Because I began to realize that the engagement of people at work was no longer discretionary but essential. And most people are not engaged at work at a time when we need every scrap of talent to collaborate and to innovate at scale. And so I've been in that space now, but largely most of my practice is working with organizations and communities to engage their people in topics to reimagine the future of business, the future of work. And I began to use that phrase, one of the first to do it about 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago. And I do that in what I call the summit rooms, which is using the appreciative inquiry set of methodologies and tools to innovate from strengths, discover our best and extend and reconfigure strengths at scale. And the social room, which is the new social movement division of a business or a community, which is where you get a group of people who are coached and equipped to host work and community effort and organizational effort as a social movement, which is a fascinating idea as a component of the future of work. So in that space there is where I'm playing these days, and I write and I speak, but it's the doing part that gives me the stuff to write about.
And the last interview that we did has had over 800 views, hasn't it? Around talking about social rooms. So there's a very clear evidence that there is an interest in this. Why don't you just give a very quick talk through the mushroom story, because this is how you came about realizing that this employee participation was so important and social within a business.
Yes. So I will run through it quickly, but the mushroom farm was a farm in Australia that was a family-owned enterprise, and grew beautiful mushrooms, but they were dependent on the supermarkets, and the supermarkets went into a price war, crunched the price of mushrooms from $28 to $60 a kilo overnight. The CEO was devastated. But as so just happened, I was about to do a summit room experience with bringing his whole team into the room, which wasn't normal practice, in fresh produce, to bring the labourers, so to speak, and the pickers together as equal players. And we were going to reimagine the future, but because of the cost war, the price war with the supermarkets, he was in a bit of a state and said, "Thank goodness we've got everyone coming today. Let's spend the whole day taking out cost. Get their ideas." And that's why I asked him the question.
Because if the supermarkets are going to drop the price, the obvious thing to do is to try and take cost out of the business.
Because we live in a world that's been taught to see business as problems and people as problems, and so customers aren't eating the dog food. And we talk the language of gap analysis and problem solving and fixing things. And the problem is when you do that, you return to a status quo. Now, what if there was a bigger idea, which is that there is an abundance of strengths and new ideas and new ways of looking at the world and new experiences that we haven't even tapped into yet, because we've been using a problem-solving language, and we've also been huddled into our silos and our expert forums rather than being connected as an open as a global ecosystem. So I just quickly said to him, and I smiled and said, I said, "John, 25 years from now, you've got your granddaughter on your knee, and she looks up to you and she says, 'What did you do with your life?' And you look down to her and say, 'Sweetheart, I spent my whole life taking out cost.' Is that what you'd really say?" And he sort of swore at me, and I said, "You're shooting the messenger." And I actually took a while, but I actually got him to just dream for a second. And I said, "What's been your greatest aspiration for the business?" And he said, "I am concerned about the obesity levels of kids in Australia. So as my wife, we've always talked about this. We've always thought, what if that became, somehow we got into the schools with our mushrooms." And I said, "So why haven't you done it?" He said, "I haven't thought about it. I haven't really given it a good conversation." I said, "So why don't we reframe the conversation from cost to how do we get into schools?" And so he got up and he shared this passion. And what he did, he shared his passion for healthy kids, vibrant, lively kids, healthy kids, prospering. And every single person loves a child in that room. And so it equalized the conversation. And so they came up with their groups, they innovated. And one group at the end presented this idea. They got into the schools with colour mushroom growing kits. First ones in the world to do that. Wow. And someone said, an African labourer who come from Somalia and just doesn't normally get a say, said, when we're collaborating with a master chef, and we got in creating menus. And then two young Thai women who are going to university, this was the thing for me, the social room, ran out of their rooms, they grabbed their mobile phones, which they weren't allowed to use during the day, came back and said, "And we have mobile app, digital, and we have social community. We have a movement of kids who are sharing their stories and recipes in a community." And I thought, social room. And the social room was born that day. I thought, if we can do these large gatherings, together as an event, why can't we engage this as a movement? And that meant then opening up and starting to do this and to talk about it. So I began to write about it as a concept. And
yes,
it was Professor Minesh Kashu from NHS Trusts in Poole.
Yeah.
That did a series with me 5 years ago on the future of the NHS as a social movement.
Yeah.
And then Sasha Romanovich from Grant Thornton, said, "Come back to England and start up our first social room." Then City of Birmingham, Civico's second social room. Then Ultimate Software Miami, and now 2 more social rooms started up. So these are progressive, but they are the idea of engaging people in the future of work and business, which is both cause-based and commercial.
Yes.
If it's good enough for us to do a social good cause together, it's good enough for us to do business together. So what in effect this is, it's reinventing the old marketplace concept of work that existed before the Industrial Revolution, took us out of the marketplace, out of the village square, where we did our business and we did our we did our life together. And we broke all those things down, and it's bringing together life and work as it was meant to be.
So in terms of the marketplace, what would happen in the old days was that you worked at home. So you made shoes, or you were a butcher, or you were you made pots, or you were a potterer. And what you did was that you had a shop and people came by. But what you did with the marketplace was that you went to the marketplace and you sold to each other.
And you were accountable to each other.
And sorry?
You were accountable because you knew each other. You couldn't rip each other off because you had to live in community together.
Yeah. So explain to us about how one of the, talk us through one of these social rooms that you set up, and how you set it up, the people that came together, and so the audience can understand the
Sure.
mechanism of this.
Um, I'll talk about Ultimate Software.
Yes.
Um, and let me say that you doesn't have to be a tech company, because this is the only one that's a tech company. But Ultimate Software are a company that it's an HR tech company based in Miami. It's been around for a number of years. First in the world to put payroll in the cloud. Um, but they also are very much into the new, what I call the new tech. That is the tech around AI and digital and employee experience, individualizing the work experience, putting the tech in the hands of people at work, and as a daily tool, not just something that you come back to every now and again, as we did with data, for example, years ago. But they also have a passionate belief that there's a reason why they do what they do, which is that they want the tech to make the world a better place. That's what I call a second stream view of the world. So Trudy Wonder, who is their director for marketing, was following the work I was doing in the UK with the Civico social room in Birmingham with Trevor Haynes' team. And my son Tom had brain cancer, and Trudy had an illness as well, and so we began talking. But she was fascinated in what was happening in a Civico, where these young people were now hosting these social conversations in Birmingham that were so powerful and so authentic. And she said, "You know what, Jeremy, we have a passion that we call equity at work. That is, that we think that we've got to do something about changing the mindsets about how to design workplaces that are, fit for purpose in the 21st century, that enable every individual to flourish. Because right now we know most people are not flourishing at work, and if we just put the tech, as good as it is, onto any old culture, it's not going to take." She said, "Would you come to Miami, and would you use that becoming social syllabus that you've talked about, and you started up with?" So I did. So here's how it works. She said, "What do we need to start this up?" I said, "This is a hosting. So a social room is started up and hosted by a group of people. Most people on social media act as individuals, quite frankly.
Yeah.
They act as individuals. They do not act collaboratively together. They don't share. They don't support each other. So when you share, it's a geometric impact.
Yeah.
If you do that. But so I flew to Miami. Before I did, I hooked up with on a Zoom call, as you do, with about 10 of them, including a vice president of the company, also their brand new intern. And she was there in the first or second or third day at work, and she was selected to join this experience. And I got on a Zoom call, and I said, "Okay, here's the first task I want you to do. Hashtag what breaks your heart. I want you to write a story about something that you care passionately about, something that you want to put right. It's as a social good, social justice thing, something you feel strongly about. What is it? Speak it out." For in a Civico, for Rav, it was homelessness, for example. For Trevor in a Civico, it was finding jobs for ex-offenders who couldn't be trusted with jobs. That's what they were passionate about. So hashtag what breaks your heart. Write this. And then the second part of the blog is to then paint a vision of what you think that better world could look like if this was put right. But not just put right, but it became something powerful, even more live and vivid. Yep. And the third thing is a call to action, asking people to join you in the work to put this right and to create the future. Now that is the three elements of a social room conversation.
Right.
Each blessed them, every single one wrote their blog. Right. And when we got to Miami, we went through the blogs together, and we laughed and we cried together. I also deployed the world's first talent dashboard called Brilliant Fit, which I used to identify the natural strengths of every single person. So we actually looked at how each individual person would want to, how they could be on social media working to their strengths, and what were our collective strengths. We then used the appreciative inquiry conversations to imagine 3 years from now, and we're collaborating at scale where, because of the social room has formed a global movement, equity at work is seeing is being in place now in organizations, and the stories are being told. And then we basically worked out how we're each going to use our talents to play on social media, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and so on. LinkedIn, we started with LinkedIn group in a particular organization, Ultimate Software, grew to 1,500 members around the world. New members starting today, I saw, including an Under-Secretary General of the United Nations, to 25 professors, including publicans and call center operators, all equalized, but all involved in these conversations. At the same time, this is where it becomes interesting. So Ultimate Software said, okay, this is a social movement part of our business now. It's powerful. We're not going to control it. It's hosted by the employees themselves. I came along and did some of that with them. We also are a company that's into research, so we're interested in what's next. So they developed what's called an Equity at Work Council, which was the research and thought leadership division of this end of things, and have been engaging with universities to do research on equity and creating new tools for the future, new products and services around indices and other sorts of things that can be used by leaders and managers to have those conversations with their people around ensuring equity is in place. Now, what's interesting now is there's an architecture in place. If you look at an organization chart for equity, they've got the council, they've also got the Equity Work Social Room as a living entity, part of this new way of doing business in 2021, which is the world's first example of that. But it's not controlled by the B2B social media managers. It's actually hosted by the employees around #WhatBreaksMyHeart. And the conversations were such that last year during COVID, we had 3 conversations that had 1,000 views, resulting in 75 people from 14 countries jumping on a series of Zoom calls together,
right,
to find new ways of collaborating to do things for both cause and commercial. That's how you start up a social room.
And I've been sharing some of the comments that have been coming in. Will saying great example of empowering and democratizing the workplace, and I think it is. I mean, it's, and I'm going to go back to Eric's point as well. It's about linking digital arms for greater good. I mean, it's so powerful because so many people think that social is about what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my products and services and I'm going to go to market and say, buy my product because it's great. But here's a B2B organization that's actually using social for the good of the world and making the world a better place.
You rarely, if ever, hear the features of products talked about in the social room. But what's interesting is this. What you hear are conversations around how can we make the world a better place together. So one conversation was where 2 young professionals in 2 different organizations were in Birmingham doing something about homelessness, breaking the barriers down, physically finding food, doing things, opening doors. And then one said to the other one, look, you design and construct buildings, don't you? And she said, yes. He said, look, we're moving an office from London to Birmingham. Would you like to build it for us? And she rather innocently said, why would you approach us? Now, he said, you're good at what you do. I'm assuming that your products are good. He said, if it's good enough for us to do a social good cause together, it's good enough for us to do commercial work together. And that is what I call bypassing the gatekeeper.
Yes, it is. Because they're in effect going, single tender. Because the person, you get to know the person, you get to like the person.
You don't do business in the marketplace as it used to be. You don't do business based on the quality of the goods and services being touted at you. You knew that the people in your town produced good services and good goods. You did business because you knew that person and you trusted them.
Yeah, there's a research company called JP Power that they used to do this analysis of cars, and they actually they stopped doing it because of the fact that what they realized was that if it's you're flying in from on holiday, you get to the airport, you go to your car, it's been stuck in a car park for 2 weeks, it's been frozen for 2 weeks because it's been cold because it's been winter, and you put your key in, you turn it, it will start, and it doesn't matter what car it is. So the fact of the matter is that every product is the same, and people don't have the knowledge to actually differentiate it. The only differentiation you have is your people.
It's the use to which the product or service is put that matters. is it a first stream use, which is trust is key, definitely, mate. Nice to see you, mate. It is there is so little differentiation. And we talk about cars, and when I was a kid living in England, you could tell the difference between a Vauxhall, you know, and a Mini. You could tell the difference between a Saab or a BMW and a Volvo. For many years, you could do that. Now they all look the same.
Yeah. And it's the employee that's making the difference and providing that. So is there any learnings that can come out of these social rooms? What are the spin-offs, and why should organizations get involved with this?
Because the future of work and businesses is a globally collected ecosystem, from the heart first, then the head. And because the individuals now, young people in particular, care about social good causes. They want to work for organizations, and they want to be connected, not shut down. They don't want to be told to switch off their iPhones like those two young Thai women were told to switch off their iPhones. And only when the dream was being co-created did they have enough courage to go into their lockers and say, we have mobile app and we can reach thousands of people if we just open up. So my question is, what's your equivalent of the mushroom farm story? How are you going to engage the talents of every single person you have in a shared cause around social good, not just corporate social responsibility? And how will you be known as a company that is engaging from the heart with your communities, beyond the idea of customer to customer, B2B or service provider to customer, but authentically caring for the planet together, and having people who generally don't see themselves as customers or suppliers anymore, but in community together, looking after the world, fixing climate change, and at the same time discovering themselves, discovering what's possible.
I think that's lovely, Jeremy, in terms of the, social media is such a powerful platform that can change the world. And I think there's enough, certainly what we're seeing with the generation, the Gen Z people coming through, the way that Black Lives Matter 12 months ago, it just spread across the world. And it spread across the world because of the way that people care, and because of the mechanisms through social media that allow that change to spread. And we can collaborate with each other across the world and make the world a better place.
And you can use the tech for either good or bad. It's neutral. You can use social media to drag people down and to be abusive, and you can you can use it to try and control, or you can use it to connect and elevate and lift people up.
Yeah.
Collaboration is the heart of business now, and the preface collaboration means two things. Together, it also means equal. So the social room is an equalizer, which engages things like inclusion and diversity, so we can put that to work together.
Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on today. And it's amazing how you're in Melbourne, Australia, and here I am in London, and there's no satellite delays, and it's just fantastic. Thank you for coming on and sharing your insight. I mean, it's the second time I've interviewed you, because I just find this social room thing just so fascinating. The way that we can, I'm a great believer that social media can change the world for the better. It already has, and it's just amazing to talk to people like yourself that have latched onto something and are developing it and innovating it and driving it forward and changing the world at the same time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
And we've had some great interaction. So thanks to Will, Eric, and Matt for your contribution as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks very much. Talk to you soon. Bye.